Love is in the air here at Wells Fargo Arena. Join the Iowa Wild on February 14th for Love in the Wild Night and February 15th for Pink in the Rink. Get your tickets now at iowawild.com.
Scott Dochterman, Chad Leistikow, together on one pod, talking Hawks and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners, exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. It is Legends and Listeners, episode 78 from the Channel Seed Studios on this Thursday morning. I am Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register. I cover the Iowa Hawkeyes. And joining me is Scott Dochterman of The Athletic, who covers the Big Ten for The Athletic. And he promises today to be the Mick Cronin of Legends and Listeners, to bring the energy.
Bringing the energy? Yeah, sure, I could do that. I'm a man. I'm not 53 like he is. I'm 51. But sure, we can complain about travel if we really want to.
I just want you to bring the energy like Mick Cronin does. I just wish you had your suit on. So, anyway.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got to lose some more hair, I suppose, too.
Well, folks, it is the end of January, normally a time of year when basketball ramps up big time. Of course, there's basketball going on right now, but we like to keep you on your toes here on Legends and Listeners, and hopefully do stuff maybe that the other podcasts aren't exactly honing in on. So it's going to be a heavy football show, Scott. Have you ready for this?
Absolutely. I'm all about football. I can talk football year round. Basketball, as we know, we can certainly talk about it and discuss it, but it times the I would
same
say
stuff, right? It's the same stuff.
It's stagnant. If we want to go in and talk about the attendance woes for the men, or what they're not doing well on the road, or what their prognosis is for any kind of postseason play, we can, but we can do that. We're going to say the same thing next week, and then we look at the women, and a nice win against Northwestern. I thought Northwestern played really well, but at the same time, it's what's coming ahead is probably a little bit more important.
Exactly. So let's start with NFL talk. This was a good idea by you, Scott. I got more excited the more I thought about this topic. With Cooper DeJean heading to the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles, a super key piece on Vic Fangio's defense, it really put a cap on what's really been an unbelievable year for Iowa football and the NFL, has it not? I mean, you kind of pointed some of this out, but I guess let's start with Cooper. What a story he's been. Where do you want to take this?
Well, I guess I'll start from kind of the 20,000 point view and then kind of move down to Cooper. And I'll say, in the final weekend of the regular season, Iowa had 15 starters and 4 who were held out for whatever reason. Either they were nursing injuries or they're getting ready for the playoffs. And Cooper was one of them. He didn't play in the season finale for the Eagles. And so when you think about that, a place like Iowa that doesn't recruit 4-star athletes with regularity, certainly very few 5 stars, to be able to produce that many players to start games. And then, ultimately they had 28 that were on active rosters in the final week. They had a couple of players like Carl Davis, who, kind of maybe disappeared from the public purview, and at least in Iowa. He's starting the NFC Championship game for the Washington football team, the Commanders. And I'm trying to avoid the other one. But you have that, and then you have injury guys like James Daniels, who's been out for the season. So ultimately, this has been another really strong year in the NFL. But as you mentioned, with Cooper DeJean, he's going to the Super Bowl. He's 21 years old. A year ago, he was coming off a broken leg, and now he's going to go start in the Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, it's such an amazing, just a cool story. I mean, I've just noticed a lot of people in Iowa and everywhere. I mean, obviously Philadelphia loves Cooper as well, but I think a lot of people here in Iowa take a lot of pride in the Cooper DeJean story because he's from super small town Iowa, Odebolt, Iowa. Sort of a how does that happen type of deal, and to go 3 and done at Iowa, and really almost left a lot on the table with his career because he barely played as a true freshman, and then of course, as you mentioned, gets hurt running an offensive play in practice on Illinois week of his true junior year. So really only gets about, a year and 2/3 of starting time for the Hawkeyes. And he was just so good in that time. I mean, he was ridiculous. You think about the Rutgers game, his sophomore year, that over the shoulder interception and just winding run back for a touchdown that kind of helped catapult that team to a really nice start. And then he had the pick 6 against Wisconsin. I mean, that was a rivalry win that year. And then of course in the Music City Bowl, he runs one back for a touchdown. And of course, no one will forget the it's not a fair catch return against Minnesota. And maybe his biggest successful punt return that counted was the one that broke Michigan State's back. The game, Cade McNamara got hurt. Deacon Hill came in. Cooper DeJean rescues victory from the jaws of defeat with a punt return touchdown. Also had an interception in that game. It's just a remarkable career for him. Becomes a consensus All-American despite not even playing the whole year. Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year. And he's a white cornerback, Scott, that a lot of people didn't think he would make it in the NFL. The NFL hasn't seen a starting white cornerback in more than 2 decades. And here he is, Cooper DeJean, not only playing for the Eagles, but playing really well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's only the second white starting cornerback since Jason Sehorn in 2002. The first one, of course, also went to Iowa, and Riley Moss, who had an outstanding season. And
that's kind of the point of our conversation. It's crazy how many Iowa players had strong years, but go ahead.
Yeah. He was the first. He's the one. I remember him talking about it a couple years ago when I mentioned it. And there were some things that we decided not to really approach. I mean, some of the rhetoric that he heard on the field, because I didn't want to turn it into some sort of culture war situation, whatever. But he had to battle a lot of adversity too. But specifically with Cooper, he was barely recruited because he's from Alphabet City High School. 4 cities, towns, little communities. Arthur, Battle Creek, Ida Grove. Yeah. I went out and visited him right as soon as the COVID restrictions were ending, his senior year, and went into high school, and it was kind of fun to get to know him and his family that day. And he was going to go to South Dakota State to play quarterback, and ultimately Iowa wanted him to play defensive back, and that was a hard decision for him because he loved playing quarterback. And dare I say, he would have been the best quarterback Iowa had over his career here. I don't think I'm going out on a limb.
Seriously, yeah.
But his impact, and you start with, Chad, a couple things his freshman year. He was just too good to leave off. He was on scout team. Then they kind of moved him in to special teams against Wisconsin, which a game that they lost in 2021. Then he made kind of that defining play. Kirk talks about it a lot. Other people do too. Against Wandale Robinson in the music or the Citrus Bowl, where he races across the field. He's replacing Jamari Harris, who was hurt and had to have surgery. He races across the field and tracks him down and stops a touchdown. Now, ultimately, they scored and they won, but his effort was a winning effort. And then you look at 2002, starts out at cash, then moves to corner, and he was playing both, a kind of a hybrid. And ultimately, again, in 2003, there wasn't a better player in the country, I thought, at his position than Cooper DeJean. He was an easy sell for me on the FWAA because I kind of load up the Big Ten for everybody, and everybody knew how good he was, and it was just, it was very impressive. And Chad, we went to college at the same time. Tim Dwight, you went to the same high school as Tim Dwight. He comes up a lot in these comparisons. I'm not there for one reason. I think Cooper's better, and I think Tim's faster, but I think Cooper's a better athlete, and Cooper's a better football player. And the only one that comes to mind, and I don't want to say this one, is Niall Kinnick.
Hey, Phil Parker made the comparison, so you're off the hook there. That was a Phil Parker thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just, I've kind of loaded up all the superlatives. You take it from here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a neat story, and it feels like it's just beginning. Like you said, he's 21 years old. He'll turn 22 on the Super Bowl day as well as Barkley's birthday as well. Yeah, it's just a cool story. And the thing about this game, about this anticipation for the Super Bowl and Cooper playing in it and starting in it is, as an Iowa follower and Iowa fans listening to this, you feel like there's a chance that Cooper DeJean might be a story when this game ends. Could he be, part of the story that ends the Chiefs dynasty, not ends the dynasty, but ends the streak of Super Bowls? He could be. I'm not going to put it past him. He made a ton of really impressive defensive plays against the Commanders. I mean, from the first drive of the game, there was a deep pass down the field on the first drive. I don't know if you watched the whole game, but Austin Eckler had kind of broken deep. Jaden Daniels is just an amazing quarterback as a rookie. Wish the Bears had him. I'm not killing Caleb Williams yet, but I would rather have Jaden Daniels. Anyway, he makes a leaping deflection on kind of an improvised deep ball to knock that pass away. And then he also held a guy. He did everything. He held a guy up and that forced a fumble from Zach Bond, I think, jarred it free. He blew up one of those bubble screens, wide receiver screens. He broke through the shield, read it perfectly. You could see like the Phil Parker instruction there, where he knew it was coming and he beat the offense to the ball and blew it up and forced a punt. I mean, those are the types of winning plays that Cooper DeJean constantly made at Iowa. And it's the reason that they didn't throw at him in 2000, especially in 2023, gave up no touchdown passes his last 16 games at Iowa. And, Scott, I wanted to get to this a little later in the show, but might as well now, but it's the number one reason that Iowa's secondary dropped off this year, because for the first time since 2021, it didn't have Cooper DeJean. And in 2021, it was pretty good with Moss, Hankins. Am I forgetting somebody? I think it was those two.
And they were injured. They were injured
too. Yeah. So, his impact was clear at Iowa. It's more clear to me now that was the biggest reason why Iowa couldn't stop the pass this year, because it never replaced Cooper DeJean adequately. I mean, you thought everybody in the secondary is back except Cooper, just got to find one guy, but you can't find a guy like him. And that's what makes him, I think, a legend. And I'm anxious or eager to see, how Cooper's story continues to progress in the NFL.
Yeah, and there's always with him. There's, because he's a punt returner, there's just like little fear I hope it's not the negative side. I hope it's not a tie score with 120 to go and a muff punt changes the outcome of the game. You'd hate to do that, but
that's not him though. Like, no. I can't even remember him.
Well, he did
so good at the punt returns.
Yeah, he did muff a punt against the Rams in the playoffs. So luckily they recovered it. But anyway, I don't want to make it.
Throw that out there, Scott. Come on.
I know. That way I get it out there. So then it's out there and it's not something that they think about. I think in his story, when it comes to the Iowa secondary this year, I think everybody understood and respected that they weren't going to find the next Cooper DeJean right away to replace him. But the drop off was way more significant than we expected. I mean, that was the weak point in the defense, which was targeted repeatedly. And, you have Devontae Ross from Troy. I think he's still running at Kinnick, and now he'll be there next year for Penn State. So,
is that right? I didn't notice that. Oh,
yeah,
no.
Yeah, he signed with Penn State. So,
oh boy,
he scored 11 touchdowns through the air. So he's a pretty fast player. But
oh boy,
but yeah, Penn State fans were kind of excited. They're like, oh, look how he torched Iowa. So they're going to have him back. But that replacing guys like that isn't seamless. Iowa was able to do it with Jack Campbell because they had Jay Higgins. Different types of players. Jack is athletically off the charts for his position group, which is why he's a starter, and he had a terrific year for the Lions and is probably headed towards Pro Bowl status maybe as soon as next year. But there wasn't that type of a player at that position. But when we look historically, and it's really difficult when you go through the Kirk Ferentz era, which is basically the Phil Parker era in the secondary, and you start to say, okay, who is the most impactful defensive back that Iowa had? Bob Sanders comes across, and yes, I don't think there's much discussion, but it's also legacy bias. Because if you were to bring in Cooper DeJean or even Desmond King, you're not totally wrong that they had a similar impact. I think those were the three best. And then you're also just, by the way, throwing out Micah Hyde, who just ended his NFL career and was a Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year. And of course, so was Josh Jackson, who had a terrific year. You have all these players, but if we stay with Cooper, I don't think you're off if you want to make a case that he is as impactful as any defensive player Iowa had under Kirk Ferentz.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a statement, but you're right. It's a small cluster of people you could throw in that conversation. And it is a shame that he didn't get to stay longer, but that's kind of the world we live in now too. Kind of crazy. He didn't even make the trip to Ames. His first, that was him, right? That didn't make the trip to, his first game, the 2021 game, the Jack Campbell, Breece Hall, Brock Purdy, Matt Hankins game. So exactly. Charlie Jones had a touchdown in that game. Let's talk about other Hawkeyes. What a year it's been. Tristan Wirfs signs the biggest contract for an offensive tackle, or most guaranteed money for an offensive tackle in NFL history, and then goes on and backs it up. Scott was the first team All-Pro left tackle. For those that don't know, All-Pro is the whole NFL, and it's like being first team All-American in college, and they pick it by position. So he was the number one left tackle, a premier position in the NFL this year. So it's basically like Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Tristan Wirfs, as Amon-Ra St. Brown as well, but as premier players on offense in the NFL. So what a year he had. Tyler Linderbaum, his neighbor up the road in Solon, Highway 1 there in Solon, had another tremendous year for the Ravens. What a season they've had. I mean, you if you watch any Ravens games, you're going to see Tyler Linderbaum making incredible blocks. And then, the Lions, right? I mean,
the Lions.
The two main guys there. I mean, Jack Campbell and Sam Laporta. Now, Laporta probably didn't have as good a year this year as he did as a rookie, but Jack Campbell, I mean, all the injuries that the Lions had on defense, he was one of the few guys that was still kind of in the fight there toward the end. And, those guys, I mean, the list keeps going on and on, Scott, of George Kittle, second team All-Pro. Still, this many years later, the second best tight end in the league, on the All-Pro team, according to, the AP or whoever, AP, I guess. So pretty amazing. I know it just keeps going, right? Ben Neiman started a game. I mean, there's stories from stars to like the grinders where there's just Hawkeyes everywhere this year. And I feel like it's been, like you said, just a really fun year to appreciate with what the Kirk Ferentz program has done in the NFL.
Let's start with Tristan, which, if you want to, for his size, there's no better athlete in the world, frankly. We saw what he was able to do, jumping out of a pool and onto the side in 4 feet of water. And he is the first player in NFL history to be first team All-Pro at both right and left tackle. That's incredible. He, the richest contract, as you said, for an offensive lineman in NFL history. He's a big teddy bear. He's as nice as they come. But I remember back in the day when it was a lot of discussion of, he's just too nice, and Tim Polasek's trying to get him to be meaner and everything. And because Lord knows, when he was a kid, that everybody's like, oh, don't hurt him, Tristan, whenever he'd wrestle or roughhouse with somebody, you can just imagine that. But one thing that stands out for me here, Chad, is I remember in 2019 I wrote a feature about iron sharpens iron, and it was about Iowa's defensive ends and Iowa's tackles. And when you look at those four, all four are starters in the NFL and played really well this year. You have two left tackles in the NFL who went to the playoffs. Tristan Wirfs and Alaric Jackson's going to get paid. He made it as a free agent. He kind of made some bad choices in college, and it cost him a little bit. But now he's going to get paid from the LA Rams. And then you look at, on the defensive line, AJ Epineza. He's a starter for the Buffalo Bills that made it all the way to the championship game and looked, he looked the part. He's, a very solid player. Probably not a Pro Bowl caliber, but he's a very strong starter. And Chauncey Golston had maybe one of his breakout seasons. He was terrific for the Dallas Cowboys and his team that really, kind of fell off the face of the earth in a lot of ways. So you look at those four, they competed every single day, and they had completely different backgrounds. And this is the testament of what Iowa was able to do with them. AJ, a 5-star. Tristan would have been a 5-star if he didn't grow up in Mount Vernon, Iowa. I mean, let's face it. He would have been a 5-star if he was going to all these camps. There's just no way around it. But they're high. He still went to the All-American game and everything. The other two were typical Iowa success stories. They built them. Alaric Jackson had the big body. It came down to Iowa and Michigan at the end. Right. And he picked Iowa, and he's a 4-year starter at left tackle, and now he's a starter at, with the Rams and whatever happens this offseason. And Chauncey Golston Kirk likes to throw out the Dallas Clark story as being the story. I think it's kind of time to retire. When you hit age 40, it's probably time to move on. Chauncey Golston is your starter kit story. I mean, he's a 210.
That's a great point. Yeah.
215 guy who got to 270 at Iowa, and he didn't look like he gained any fat doing it. And he built himself up. He did it the right way. And, some of his, one of the his senior year, that's when your senior success stories come out. He was first team all Big Ten. He made the pivotal play to beat Nebraska on Black Friday. Was part of one of the better defenses Iowa's ever had, and a couple of times. And now he's starting in the NFL, and he's going to get paid too. So you've got this quartet that worked every single day against one another, became friends. And now, they're in the NFL for a long period of time, starting in the NFL, in their mid to late 20s.
Great stuff there. I mean, there's so many other names too. I mean, of course, that you think about the long timers like Brandon Sheriff still going. Yeah. But there's other, Geno Stone got paid this past off season.
He had a pick 6.
Yeah, for the Bengals. How about Amir Smith-Marset? I mean, he hasn't gone away. I mean, you think about Iowa offense. He was one of the early revelations, I guess, in the Brian Ferentz era.
He had a punt return for a touchdown.
Yeah, for the Giants, and so
Tyler Goodson. Scored a touchdown.
You just keep going here. It's just crazy. It's Christian Welch kept playing. TJ Hawkinson, of course, came off injury. We know how good he is. He's gotten paid. And hey, let's give him. You mentioned Riley Moss, but let's talk about Tory Taylor too. I mean, he had a tremendous rookie year for our the beloved Bears. We saw him play a lot.
He punted a lot more than Caleb Williams told him we would.
Yeah, Tom Kakert and I watched we went to in Nashville. We went to a Chicago bar to watch the Bears Seahawks game because it was on Prime, and of course it wasn't in our hotel rooms or whatever. Wow, we saw a lot of Tory Taylor that night.
Yeah, that's right.
What was the final, like 6-3 or something?
It was. Bad. It was like the worst game I've ever seen.
It was so awful. We sat there for 3 hours and watched the Bears score 3 points. Maybe they didn't even score 3. I don't even remember. It was a horrible game.
It was.
Anthony Nelson, Noah Fant, Kayvon Merriweather. I mean,
and they all started. They're all starters. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's impressive. And then you think about even like Eric All, who was starting to break through, and then horrible, catastrophic ACL, and now a double surgery. He's going to miss 2025. It just sucks, but it just goes to show you that these guys that Iowa, whether they're here 2 years, 1 year, 5 years, 6 years, it's rare that an Iowa player ends up being a bust in the NFL. It's, I don't know. There's not many, right? I mean, Josh Jackson didn't quite pan out. I mean, I don't know if you call him a bust, but it was a second rounder. But it's very. I mean, you just look at these guys. It's a good bet to take a Hawkeye.
Well, two guys we haven't mentioned yet who are starters, long-term starters, are Amani Hooker and Josie Jewell, and they sat out the last two games. Hooker is one of the best safeties in NFL, and a guy from a two-star guy from North Minneapolis that he went to 3 different Gophers camps and they never wanted him. Under Jerry Kill, almighty Jerry Kill, didn't want him, and he comes to Iowa, and in year 3 he becomes Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year. Josie Jewell, as we know, Luther College or Iowa, and I remember talking to Phil Parker about him. He goes, well, our decisions were, it depended on lateral quickness with him. If he could stay really fast and be laterally quick, then maybe he's a safety. If he still has good lateral quickness, he's a linebacker. If he doesn't, then he's a fullback. And that's kind of where they looked at him. He ends up becoming the Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year and a unanimous first-team All-American. And he was, starting – it started for several years now. Now he's with Carolina Panthers, and it's been really impressive what he's been able to do and how he's lifted that team. Kayvon is kind of one of your success stories who's had to come the hard knocks way. I mean, he's a free agent. This year he got cut by the kind of a numbers game. Got cut by Tampa Bay. Goes to Detroit for a week or two on the practice team. Then ends up back in Tampa Bay, starts late in the season, including the playoff game. Dane Belton started for the Giants. And would we be remiss if we didn't mention in a lot of words here on George Kittle, because it's almost easy to overlook him. And in some ways, there's some people who kind of gravitate towards the Iowas. I mean, like Dallas Clark was talked about Iowa all, forever. They talk about him more today than they do the George Kittle. And George Kittle is a better player than Dallas Clark, by the way. He is a better football player at that level. He is a potential Hall of Famer. Dallas was a good player, no question. But to have the season he did at age 30, 31, I mean, that's really impressive. I would say over the last decade or roughly that he's been in there, only Travis Kelce has been more productive than he has. So this is a great run. And then, a couple of people who got, put on the shelf this year. You mentioned, Eric All. James Daniels had a tough, I think it was an Achilles early on. Carl Davis, what a success story he is. His last year was 2014. And here he is still making a roster, still filling in. And the last minute, they had an injury. They move him up from the practice team. He starts. He has 5 tackles in the NFC Championship game. Micah Hyde, what a tremendous career he had. Just consistently got better. He went from being a 165-pound quarterback to coming here, starting, beating out Jordan Bernstein, which was kind of a surprise at the time, becoming Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year, goes to Green Bay, has a really nice run, and then elevates his profile, goes to Pro Bowls with Buffalo, is one of the most valued members of that community. And I will say this, I've never seen a team do somebody right the way Buffalo did him, which was he had a neck injury the year before. It looked like he wasn't going to be able to play ever again. He got healed enough that they put him on the practice team this year just because they wanted him part of it, and he wanted to be part of it. And then, he retired after the game on Sunday. And, and then Desmond King's hanging on. He's been on practice teams. He played for the Ravens, returned some punts. Brandon Smith got in a game for the Jets. So there's some, Parker Hesse made it 5 starting tight ends. And that's when Hawkinson was out in one weekend for Iowa with Eric All, Hesse, Kittle, Fant, who had a pretty nice year, and Sam Laporta.
Wow, that's crazy. And I don't think we've even mentioned Lucas Van Ness. He's still kind of ascending with the Packers. Hopefully not too much. No, I'm just kidding.
He's never started a game yet.
In his whole crazy.
In college or pro, it's amazing.
Someday.
Yeah, someday.
Well, she'll probably get a huge contract and still not be a starter. He'll be like the story of Lucas Van Ness's career.
Yeah.
it's the end of January, and we're talking about development of your bodies. And hopefully you've been exercising and getting your body right by visiting GameDay Men's Health. GameDay Men's Health wants to help you feel like you're in your 20s again, even if you're an old 51-year-old like me. They are outstanding with testosterone replacement therapy, and they're really excited about how they can help you safely lose weight. We all start losing a step, Scott, except for maybe George Kittle as we get older, but you can stay in the game longer and absolutely improve your energy, your mood, your performance on and off the field by going all in with GameDay Men's Health. Check out GameDay Men's Health with a no obligation, free private visit, GameDayMen'sHealth.com, or stop by Ankeny, West Des Moines, or North Liberty. Got my tee shot on Wednesday here, every Wednesday in West Des Moines for me. Although my wife had to give me one out west last week.
I had one. I do it Mondays, and I just recently crossed the 30-pound mark. So
congrats, bud.
Yeah. So I feel pretty good, and combination of a couple things, but certainly GameDay Men's Health has really helped me get back on track, and I'm anxious to see when the weather starts to warm up. Although that maybe I can take another step forward and make this get down to maybe pre-college weight. I don't know. We'll see.
That'd be great. I want to build on this NFL conversation. It's kind of the base of this next piece of the conversation, Scott, is I feel like the way Iowa has had so much success with the NFL, putting guys in the NFL and, getting those contracts, et cetera, that we just talked about. I mean, heck, they could clip this whole first 30 minutes of our podcast and send it to recruits, honestly. But is in the revenue sharing world, I feel like that could be a huge selling point for a program like Iowa's, because now you can pay the players. I mean, 14 and 15 million, towards your football roster if everything gets approved and goes through. And, you can come to Iowa and kind of, I think how they're going to do it, I don't know for sure, but is have your more proven, experienced players make the most. So that would be a really smart way for Iowa to, I think, capitalize the best in this revenue sharing model, where, I just don't see under Ferentz them going out and paying a high school senior. So maybe they will, but I think they're going to count on the NFL style where it's, hey, you make this much as a freshman, this much as a sophomore, you keep sticking with the program, and it's going to pay off for you not only as a veteran player for the Hawkeyes, but in the NFL someday. I think that this can be a real win for Iowa football in the revenue sharing era. What do you think?
I think there are some ways to do that. And, you do have to make sure that, it's based on marketability and by position and your success at that position. And that it's going to follow a lot of the NFL model. You're a starting left tackle, you're going to make some money. If they've got a quarterback, no question, pass rusher, shutdown corner, defensive tackle, those positions are going to be premium positions, and you got to pay them accordingly. I think Iowa can sell itself exactly the same way it always has. Is you come here, we develop you, you work hard, you're coachable, you have good character, you build yourself up, and you've got the opportunity to do exactly what everybody else does, and we'll pay you. And it's going to be the same. I mean, they're not going to be able to go out and get the 5 stars that Ohio State gets, except for on a rare occasion. It's probably a legacy guy like an Epideza or something, or somebody local. That's just not going to be in their DNA when it comes to recruiting. But almost all of these players that we've mentioned here start at a level and then develop themselves through the program and end up in this situation. I mean, let's take the Neiman brothers. They're from Sycamore, Illinois. They're wide receivers in high school who became NFL linebackers. Christian Welch was a 2-star from Iola, Wisconsin, in the middle of nowhere. And he's He was a valued member of the Ravens special teams this year. As we know with Cooper, he's out in the middle of Alphabet City, Iowa, Northwest Iowa, and got overlooked even though he had such an amazing pedigree. And Iowa and Chauncey Golston, Detroit guy. He came here with Cedric Lattimore. He was kind of not a throw-in, but kind of we really want Lattimore and we'll take him too. But he bought in. And those are the guys you show. It's Chauncey Golston to say he worked his ass off and now look at him. This is you if you apply yourself the way he does, because JT Tuimaleo from Ohio State, who's probably a lot like AJ Epineza, they're going to go there. You're going to come here. We've got to build you in that position. We got to build you like Josie Jewell. We got to build you like Jay Higgins. We got to build you like Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta is going to Bowling Green or Iowa. Ends up at Iowa, and now he's, he was a second-team All-Pro last year. Mm-hmm. They've got great stories, a great reputation for that in building, and now they can solidify it a little bit and be choosy too. Probably even more choosy than they have been in the past now, because when you have money to spend, and a lot of places aren't going to have that, even in the Big 12 and the ACC, they're just not going to be able to match that. Then they're going to be operating a little bit higher plane, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this all unfolds, I guess. Like what is how do you properly pay let's say in the Cooper DeJean era, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I think they're going to continue to, Brad and the Swarm have done a really good job to this point of roster retention. So I think that's going to also be a big piece of the revenue sharing puzzle that Tyler Barnes and Kirk Ferentz put together. I think it works well for how Iowa operates. That was kind of my point, I guess. And I think you made a good, you articulated that quite well. Do you want to move on to other stuff? Do you got any more Hawkeye stuff, Hawkeye football stuff? Because I got some Jim Knowles and some Connor Stallions still on the docket here. So whatever you want.
Yeah, there's a lot there with the Big Ten when it comes to moving forward, and I think starting with Jim Knowles switching teams, and these aren't just regular teams; these are rivals, significant rivals who are in the Final Four this year, and nearly played each other again for the national title. And now he's going to be making $3.1 million per year.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? I mean, the Penn State's like, we're done messing around. I was listening to the College Football Inquirer, and they're like, kind of reminding like how, Joe Paterno, at the end was making about $1 million a year, and now their defensive coordinator is making 3.1 per year. It's just, Penn State has kind of gone from that more, we'll get all the recruits, we'll have the greatest stadium, whatever, but the finances are always a little bit semi-private or whatever. But now it's just like they're ready to play ball, and I think it's fascinating to go. You not only, it's kind of like the Bears taking Ben Johnson. It's like a double win, because you take something from one of your rivals and you put him front and center on your team. And Penn State seems like it's it's got Allard coming back. I mean, it's going to be right up there next year in this whole thing. So I just think that's another part of this, revenue sharing that the Big Ten has an advantage of. Like if you're looking at, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's been a lot made about, why do you care so much about that extra $10 million or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. But this is kind of what it gets you, as a conference. You've got more money than the other guys. And I know in this case it's conference to conference, but you have to, I think this is an example of the Big Ten, as income for Iowa and all these other schools, through these TV partners, and it goes up. You're going to be able to retain and attract the best coaches, right? Isn't that kind of, I do feel like the Big Ten is really well positioned here.
The Big Ten's flexing right now, and it deserves to. It's won the last two national titles, It's had, powerhouse programs. And Penn State, as you mentioned, was kind of a mom and pop operation. Wisconsin was really bad at that when Barry was the AD. I mean, he was cheap. I mean, they didn't pay anybody. They always lost their assistants. It was kind of a mom and pop operation until Urban Meyer came, and Urban challenged people. Everybody hated his guts, and they still do. But he did change the landscape, because he took Ohio State from being kind of a team that could compete for a title but get beat doing it, to a team that could win a title. And then Michigan had to measure itself against it, and Penn State did, and other schools in the league. And that's what you've seen here. And I think with Jim Knowles moving, that's a message that Penn State's making. We're all in on winning the national title. And if that means we pay our defensive coordinator $3 million, we're going to do it, because we're going to win the national title. We have the team to do it. They're my pick anyway. I picked them in our pick, and I think they were within a field goal of going to the championship game this year. They brought back some of the best players in the country. Obviously Abdul Carter's going to be one of the first pick in the draft, but the rest of them, bringing back both those running backs, bringing back Danny Dennis Sutton. I mean, he's legit off the edge, and you want to win it, and your fans kind of deserve your best shot when you can, whether it's paying a ton of money for a quarterback or it's paying for a defensive coordinator. You deserve the opportunity to win. And I think that's where the Big Ten is well positioned, that because of the revenue that they've been able to generate through their media rights contracts and having great stadium success and selling $23 million worth of tickets, which Iowa did this year, and everything, then you could pay your coaches. You can keep your valued linebackers coach to be your assistant head coach and pay him $1 million a year at Iowa. You could move, and do all of these things that I think enable you to compete for a title, compete for the playoff, compete to win it. And, I expect Nebraska to do the same thing. I think Iowa's in that ballpark. Oregon. I'm anxious to see what Wisconsin does, because Wisconsin has been a complete disappointment and is falling really fast. And they're a team you've got to be careful of. I've mentioned this before, Chad, and you can tell me if I'm full of it or whatever. But I mean, when you look at identities, don't sacrifice your identity no matter what you do. As far as you could bring in a new coach, but maintain who you are. Because I look at Wisconsin and I think big linemen, power running game, great elite level defense. And they had none of that this year. And that was their identity. If Iowa, you don't want the equivalent of Fran running the run and shoot on offense. You're going to lose something there if you come to Iowa. So anyway, long-winded rant. I do think that Penn State made the right call, and Ohio State's going to go out and get they're going to knock on some doors here in Iowa City, and it's going to be, we'll see if they get anywhere, but it's everybody, it's cutthroat. You want to win it. It doesn't matter how.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I mean, Phil Parker makes $1.9 million for the Hawkeyes, obviously well paid, and really likes being in Iowa City. But he is an Ohio guy. Do you think there's any chance that, number one, I would think Ohio State would come make a phone call at least. But what do you think about the potential for Parker being interested in the defensive coordinator spot there?
I think if he had any interest, I think it's available to him. I mean, he's just that good. That's a hard thing to answer, though. I mean, if you've been somewhere, I've been here almost 20 years, this time around, and I love where I live, and it would take a lot for me to leave. In his case, he's been very loyal to Kirk, and they've been very loyal to him. I mean, they've practically doubled his salary in the last couple of years, and he enjoys it here. His daughter just got married to a former player, Tanner Miller, so they live nearby. So all those factors into it, now he's from Ohio. Does it mean anything? I grew up in Burlington. I love Burlington. I'm a Greyhound for life. I have my jersey over my shoulder here, but I don't want to live there again. I hate to say it, but I don't. But I like visiting. Maybe he's the same way. Maybe he loves his roots and his Ohio. He went to Michigan State, but he just assumed be here at least through Kirk's tenure.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't know anything that is going to happen, but you would think they would at least. I mean, if I'm Ohio State, that's a guy I would reach out to.
No question.
Number one, he knows the whole Big Ten, and number two, he's great.
Yeah.
I think the biggest detractor though would be I think Ohio State coordinators do pressers every week, and I just can't imagine Phil wanting to go through that every week. Columbus media is a pro media market, so if you screw up at all, it's like covering the New York Jets or something, or coaching for the New York Jets. Seriously, it's just a totally different world. So I can't imagine he would welcome that. But hey, what is he, 60?
He's 60 plus.
Yeah, early 60s. I mean, he's either going to finish at Iowa or he's going to make a move like that. So, and if he did, Iowa's got his replacement right there. So, it wouldn't be the complete disastrous end of the world, but Iowa would like to keep him too. So, well, we're not reporting anything. But I'm just kind of speculating with the Ohio connection, the recent opening. If you're Ohio State, smart place. They went out and got Chip Kelly for the offense. Why not go get the Broyles winner for the defense?
Right. Jim Knowles was in that category this year. He was terrific, and I think Phil would enter that as well. They play a different style, so that would take some time for everybody to kind of maneuver. The secondary is usually more aggressive there because they have players that have different athletic talent than some of Iowa's guys, even though they're great, don't get me wrong, but it's just different. The one thing that we can't overlook with Phil, though, it's not just being the defensive coordinator, it's being the secondary coach. Yes, this year they stuck out at right corner. It was a struggle. They didn't do very well. But he's still maybe the best in the country, and that includes the NFL, as being a secondary coach. So not only does he coordinate the defense with help from Seth and everybody, and then, of course, but the way he teaches the defense is something you just can't, or the secondary, you just can't overlook. He's too good at that.
Yeah, we're not trying to panic you guys, but just obviously connecting some dots here with the recent news. How about Connor Stallions back in the news here? The Michigan sign stealing scandal front and center. Brett Bielema, I don't know if he was drunk tweeting or what, but he was going crazy last night. Notice of allegations that's been reported includes 6 level 1 violations related to Connor Stallions and the Michigan sign stealing scandal. I know this is semi-new development, Scott, but what is your kind of reaction? What does this mean for Michigan? Is this a big, huge problem? Is it a blip? Is it more of a national, is it more of a scandal story, but not a real impact? What do you see here?
It's really hard to predict what the NCAA can and can't do these days. They could try to act big and bad and tough and do certain things, and then next thing you know, it's did you do anything at all? Lord knows, look at, the situations in basketball, and they couldn't be more impotent if they tried. But I think you look at, this one in particular, I think it makes for great headlines. It makes for really interesting discussions. I'm not sure that they're going to have much teeth. They could call it level 1. Michigan's going to fight it tooth and nail. They already have started that. I like the fact that it's in the news again. That's great. And let's face it, that everybody believes that they're not only guilty, but that it was destructive to the game that competed against them. We've talked to people behind the scenes. I've talked to coaches, not only just, some that I barely knew from other teams that were severely impacted by this. And it was very strong what they were doing. And now there are some games when you look at Iowa, Michigan in the 2021 championship game, it wasn't going to matter. Iowa could have cheated and it wasn't going to matter. It's 42-3. If Iowa, but here's the thing. If they know what play is coming, or if they know, when they raise their arm, on the sideline because it's a pass that they see that Iowa is signaling in, you play differently. You attack the edge, you blitz, you play back. You don't have to worry about your linebackers taking a step forward to beat the running back in the hole. You got to, you get back. And if it's in a close game, then it's one play. It's two plays. It's 4 plays that matter. And it's breaking up that 3rd and 4 pass across the middle. You jump the route because you knew it was there. That's a disadvantage for your opponent. And so I'm interested to see what happens. I don't think they'll take away their title, but I know there weren't a lot of people that were sad to see them struggle this year. I do know that there were some people who actually said, that normally hated Ohio State a little more. Mm-hmm. Now we're like, yeah, we hate Michigan more. The arrogance and then the cheating scandal just infuriated people. I mean, beyond words.
Well, and part of the new developments are that Sharon Moore, obviously then the offensive coordinator, apparently deleted, according to this, one of the more serious allegations is that he deleted 52 text messages with Connor Stallions the same day as the news broke from Yahoo Sports surrounding the NCAA investigation. So, what do those text messages contain? I mean, it does indicate that he knew something, and he's the current head coach of Michigan. So you can see that there is a potential for something, but I'm very skeptical when it comes to the NCAA that really their enforcement is just so feeble. You used the word impotent. Yeah. It's a pretty good word too. It just seems like they can't ever. I mean, they had, what was it? Kansas basketball. I mean, just seemed like they had them like with their pants down basically, and nothing, nothing.
I know.
Did he even miss a game? He might've missed 2 games. I don't even know, but like,
right. And the North Carolina scandal over those classes that weren't even classes, and nothing happened there because, the college basketball, upper level media, I'm not even going to say all of us because I'm part of it too, but just the way that those coaches get godded up, like, oh, Jim Calhoun, Jim Boeheim, Roy Williams. I'm using my Dickie V voice, I know, but it's like they could do no wrong. It doesn't matter what they did. Well, come on, So anyway, yeah. So I don't have a whole lot of faith that the NCAA and its current governance structure is going to be able to do much to Michigan, and Michigan will fight it with every fiber in itself because it doesn't want to have a ban. It doesn't want to have anything like that. But yeah, Bielema feels a little wounded too by this because, you think about the 2022 season, they kick a last-second field goal to beat Illinois. Mm-hmm. Illinois would have went to the Big Ten championship that year, and that was there's some questionable games there. Yeah, there's some questionable plays in that game.
Yeah, it's. And Harbaugh, kind of ran off to the Chargers. So yeah, it's real fascinating. Look forward to some of that, continuing coverage at The Athletic there, Scott. You want to finish up with, we could preview, I guess, Sunday, right? Caitlin Clark jersey retirement. Let's put off men's basketball for a week, I would say. They don't even play the rest of the week. There's nothing new to talk about there. They just got blown out by Ohio State on the road. But women's basketball, just being at the game Tuesday night, even against a lousy team, the environment really is so good there, but I just can't imagine what it's going to be like. On Sunday, it's 12:30 on Fox. Caitlin Clark's 22 will be retired after the game. Juju Watkins is going to be here, 4th ranked USC. And the Iowa women, it's going to be what do you think it's going to be like on Sunday?
It's going to be an atmosphere that it'll probably remind us a lot of the Ohio State game last year, the regular season finale when they had senior day. I think it's going to have that kind of celebratory feel. I don't know what the I won't predict the results. I mean, it's going to be an uphill climb for Iowa to win. That's a very good team, and Iowa has shown it's been able to beat a team like that. That said, though, this is about celebrating the greatest athlete in school history, and whether you like her or don't. I mean, she is the modern day. Niall Kinnick has always been put up that pedestal, but I think for prominence and power and everything, she is that. She is the greatest athlete in Iowa sports history, and has done more to reshape the game. And I expect fans to really celebrate that and make it endure. And I think what's telling is, today I wrote about, Iowa women's basketball made $3.2 million in season in ticket sales last year, which was the first time ever that they had more than the men. The men were at 2.9 million, and it was 1.8 million more than they'd ever had made before. And even more fascinating to me is, out of the 6 schools that I've got their forms, I still have a couple stragglers out there. They made $1.6 million year over year in ticket sales, because they played Iowa at home. So you have Ohio State made $400,000 more in ticket sales year over year. You have, Nebraska's was very light. It was like 66,000 because they actually played Iowa year over year. But you have all these major factors that she had a hand in, and she's the most significant athlete in college athlete in this quarter century. And I think the most, as Time Magazine said, the most important athlete in the world right now.
Wow. Yeah. And Dargan and I were just talking about it, the game on Tuesday. Just crazy to think about. It was less than a year ago, Caitlin Clark's, scoring 40 and beating LSU and Angel Reese, to get to the Final Four. And then the next game, they beat Gino Ariema and UConn in the national semifinals. And that's just such foreign territory for Iowa, major Iowa athletics, to beat the big juggernauts, and to do it, it wasn't a fluke, they beat them fair and square. And you've said it a few times on our show, Scott, but I think the other than all the points and all the excitement, all the logo shots, the 33-footer to set the NCAA record, all that stuff. But the fact that Caitlin Clark, 2 straight years, no, they didn't win the national championship, but the Iowa women's basketball team this last year in particular, delivered on the highest of expectations. And I think that is, to me, many legacies for her at Iowa. But the fact that she brought so much, not just her, but the whole team, but led by her, brought so much joy to the Iowa fan base and helped them, helped everybody just feel so good about Iowa women's basketball, the Hawkeyes, just that they reached that stage 2 years in a row. They reached the national title game. Yeah, they fell a little bit short in those games. But man, that the rides getting to that point were just incredible. 3 Big Ten tournament titles. You even think about the Big Ten championship game last year, where they rallied from down 8 against Nebraska with 2 minutes to go, and Nebraska had the ball.
Yeah,
and Iowa still found a way to. Caitlin and company found a way to force overtime. Kate Martin hit a bunch of threes. Gabby Marshall drew up, got the big block in that game. And it's just all that stuff piled together. I feel like that's kind of the legacy. And I'm interested to see the retirement ceremony on Sunday, post game, to kind of see what stuff is captured, in whatever presentation they have.
You're right. And I think that there's 2 points there that I think stand out above the rest, because yes, she's the most prolific scorer in NCAA basketball history. What they were able to do and what they were able to achieve is just something rare. But 2 things that are kind of unique to her team versus other teams, even at the university, are, how many times has Iowa's football team walked into a season with incredibly high expectations and achieved them? Other than 1985, never. it just falls short, and it's tough. It's nothing wrong. It's just the way it is. They were able to do it not only the first time, but the second time when all eyes in the country were on them every play. I mean, they set record after record. Every single road game was sold out. Every single one of them. You talk about going in, whether it's Nebraska or Northwestern or Rutgers or wherever, and the tournament, and getting almost 20 million viewers for the championship game. All eyes were on them, and they lived up to it each and every time. That is something that's unique, something to be celebrated. But I think more than that, and you touched on that, and this kind of gets me a little bit almost emotional. It's not about the players themselves, but it's how they made everybody feel. It's how, when you saw the older women who played 6-on-6 who were in there, and they feel like they're their daughters, or you see the young girls in their high-pitched squeals, Caitlin, wanting to get the autographs, or just the fans, the men wearing 22 shirts, the boys wearing 22 shirts. It's cool to wear something for a female athlete, which has never happened before. So the community feel of going out in the public, and there are smiles on the faces. You can't put a price on that. You can't put a price on how you feel. It's real and it's organic. And for the community, the state, the people who follow her, but also the whole team, because people had their favorites, whether it's Gabby or Molly in her headband or Kate Martin, the glue. And even now, Hannah is very popular.
Oh, yeah.
She's probably the most popular player there. And, and bench players like HA and Jada are, as popular on social media as anybody. But the way they made everybody feel, you can't put a price on that, and that's special. And I think that's going to be part of the celebration, because people will remember the first time they saw her, or when they took their kid to the game, or they sat with their mom in a nursing home. I had a conversation with a lady at the Big Ten Network. I wrote about this with Andrew Marchand, and she's like, I've worked 30 years in sports television, and my mom never cared once. I call her, she's in a nursing home recovering from something, and she's like, I've got to go. We're all watching the Iowa women's basketball game. And she's like, she's never watched it once. My 70-year-old dad never once asked me about an Iowa men's basketball game when I covered it home and away. Yet, he's got the app for the WNBA. He's got the BTN Plus, so he can watch the women's team now. That's the residue. That's the result of all this, and again, you can't put a price on it. We live in a small state, Chad. We love our state. I never want to leave if I don't have to. And so to see your neighbors, to see your friends, to see people of all ages feel that warmth and joy, it's special. It's something that you wish you could bottle up, because it's rare.
Beautifully said. Beautiful way to end our show here. Thank you, Scott. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow, Legends and Listeners. Comes at you every Thursday from the Channel Seed Studios, and only on Iowa Everywhere.